Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. Now this comes from my to-do list, and I have quite a lengthy to-do list. I have a lot of videos that I wanted to talk about, or a lot of things I wanted to talk about in videos, and I just haven't gotten around to it for one reason or another. And also I get a lot of suggestions from subscribers and messages and comments, and I always appreciate those. I get a lot of my ideas for videos through those, so I definitely encourage them. And I also like to talk about lost history, or things I think historians have kind of missed. And this is a site on the U.S.-Canadian border, and this is called Grand Mound State Park. And this is along the Rainy River, and this is the border of the U.S. and Canada. It's an excellent walleye fishing river. Trust me on that one. But this is all you can see from the air of Grand Mound State Park. And I mentioned this in a video I did about a year ago on pre-Columbian sites in the United States, but I really didn't investigate this too much, and I'm glad I did. And it is what is under the tree canopy and the growth here that people have kind of missed, just because they only do research on this in the summer, and all they do is investigate the mound. And really, the deterioration and the degradation of the mound kind of led to, I think, the true history of this not being told. But I'm going to go over to a website here, and this is what it looks like underneath that tree canopy. And what I came to realize in reading this paper through the Minnesota Archaeological Institute, or Society, I'm not sure what it's called, but I will leave the link below. But this is not a mound down here. This is actually a giant earthwork, a giant effigy of some sort, and the mound is diamond shaped, and what people have realized, I guess now, is that there is a giant tail coming off of it. And I just want to do a little bit of reading. And this is what the mound looks like in the wintertime. And I was pretty shocked to learn that there is actually a tail coming off of this, because this makes it appear to me that this comes from a much earlier time in history. It says, Grand Mound has long been a prominent landmark. Unfortunately, in the late 19th and early 20th century, the site was a focus of antiquarian investigations and a spot for steamboat passengers to picnic and dig in the mounds. Dig in the mounds, yeah, it actually says that. Fred Smith was so offended by this that he purchased the property in 1930. And I say, way to go, Fred. He then encouraged professional archaeologists to investigate the site, and it has held a prominent role in American archaeology ever since. And if it has, why hasn't the true history been brought out in this place? And here is a picture from over 100 years ago of Grand Mound. And this is really just the head of a giant earthwork, or at the beginning of it. And it says here, it was not until the mid-1900s that former Minnesota Historical Society manager Mike Budak discovered the Grand Mound's long, low-lying tail. It says, in fairness, others had noticed a slight ridge in that area, and this guy in the 1950s did, and nearly all the previous investigations had been in the summer when the site is covered by thick floodplain vegetation. And what it also says here, I find is interesting. It says, the mound is about 25 feet high and about 125 feet long, while the tail extends about another 200 feet in length. There is no other known mound like this in the United States. It says there is a similar mound located in Westbourne, Manitoba. And it says, it is possible that the symbolism of the two mounds is related, as they are both located near the Campbell Beach Ridge of a giant glacial lake that was formed at the end of the last ice age. And I find that interesting, that he relates it to the end of the last ice age, and we have something with a long tail here. This is comet symbolism coming from way long time ago. That is just one thing that races across my mind. We have mounds here, three of them, three main mounds in this formation. And were these built at the time the mound was, or is this just a later culture coming in and building some mounds near this giant earthwork? That is entirely possible. But I just think the story here has been missed. Since this is a giant earth effigy, And one thing I noticed, that this is on a point, and the Serpent Mound is on a point of land too. And when I measured it, the little peninsula that Serpent Mound is on is similar to the size that this kind of peninsula of land is on. I just thought I would mention that too. But I think this could be something coming from a much earlier time in history than 1,000 years ago, and the so-called mound builder generation or era. But I just thought I would bring this up. I think this is pretty fascinating. This could be as old as Serpent Mound. This could be made by the same culture that built Serpent Mound. Who knows? But what this actually represents is anybody's guess. I have no theory on what this represents. If you want to leave a comment what you think it might represent, go ahead. And just through time and flooding, I guess, and people digging in the mounds 100 years ago, that story disgusts me, just like the story of the mounds in St. Paul, Minnesota, where they were cleared just so the rich residents could have a better view of the river. Some things that happened in my home state over 100 years ago really turned my stomach, but I'm glad Fred Smith preserved this property. So maybe one day the true story of this earth effigy can be told, and I'm glad I'm telling it today. But I think that is a story from history that we might be missing. This could be a site just as important as Serpent Mound. This comes from northern Minnesota, and I will leave some links in the description. I hope you thought this was interesting, and you all have a nice day.